folks, synergy is all about having the facets working together, all the facets working towards the single goal. And without communicating well with your team, the goal can be tough and frustrating to meet. So it's great to be working with Jamie Miller on this project for Total Synergy this year. I'm not unfamiliar with Jamie because he works in comms and PR. Of course, I know him by reputation over many years. It was in a completely different industry that we first crossed paths. But Jamie himself is an excellent sailor, a yachtsman, if you didn't know. He hails from Scotland, which you would have heard when he first presented up here, and the Scottish accent is pretty much considered worldwide as the Klingon of all English accents in trying to understand what people are saying. But it's pretty much been beaten out of him since arriving in Australia. But he's done that coming-of-age trip, which most sailors in the Northern Hemisphere do, which is from the UK across the Atlantic over to New York. And look, I guess to draw some sort of metaphor, I mean, being on board a yacht, the communication has to be, the internal communication, the team communication has to be very strong and very succinct, leading to a goal, not just finishing the trip, but also what happens minute by minute or hour by hour when you're on watch on a boat. So, you know, there's no doubt that he brings all those skills, including his graduate skills, into being a great communicator and a great PR person. But you do have to bring that internally back into your business. You have to work out how to make that effective to communicate with your team, and that's what Jamie's going to talk about now. Would you please make him welcome?
Thanks, Tim. That's the first time I've been referred to as the Klingon. Just excuse me for a sec. I've just really, quite fortunately, discovered I got a frog in my throat just before I have to talk for 40 minutes. So, cheers. Okay. So each year for this session, I try and come up with something that I can make relatable to different sized businesses that may not have things like marketing or communications as a core focus of their business. It's not that they're not concerns or areas that you think about or try and create strategies around. It's just that maybe some of it slips by. The benefit for us is that the structure of the company is about 4 years ago. They made a decision that communications was necessary to be thought about as a fully formed role. You know, the traditional ways of communicating to all the audiences, which traditionally are outside audiences, were changing. There was this drive for content and drive for digital capability and so on. And that's what I was brought in to do. And over the last 4 years, we've been able to develop various systems and strategies and implementations that allow us as a company to communicate better. And last year, what I talked about, if anyone was here, was about employer brand, which is about making the company somewhere people want to work when you're faced with competition from arguably huge, much more well-known brands, you know, the likes of Microsoft and Atlassian and so on, who hire developers and QA people and testers. And then there's Little Synergy, which, you know, there's 20 of us, and we are very targeted vertical. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the value of communicating with your team internally and what that's going to do for your business. So today we're very much a knowledge-based economy, right? Your company's most important asset is no longer its equipment or its physical capital. It's the people that work inside it, okay? If you don't look after these guys, your company's not going to project itself in the right way, and your reputation becomes affected. So these employees, they need to be creative. They need to approach problems in innovative ways to help design products or services or, you know, win business. They need to engage with customers in meaningful ways. And to do this, you've got to engage with your employees in a new way so that people are excited and motivated to bring their skills to your organization and want to be there and work for the brand that you've built. There's a lot of stats out there about disengagement. I think if you read the article in there about the foundations of a winning people strategy in the magazine, which is by Checkside. They've got even slightly more alarming stats about disengagement. So generally, excuse me, around the way, 1 in 3 teammates are disengaged from their work, okay? I'm just going to tell you, when you look up imagery about employee engagement and so on, you get the worst stock imagery ever. So where that's the only choice, I picked the worst I can find. But it's by intent. So internal communications is often seen as something for big enterprises. Okay, it's a very corporate thing. But it's actually something that all businesses do to a greater or lesser extent every day. So what I'm going to talk about is what it is, how this relates to all businesses and why it's critical. And then I'll work along to some guidelines of how you can maybe think about setting it up in your own business if you haven't already, and why it's going to add value, and make it really a focal point of your business objectives. So I'll introduce you to a little of the theory behind it, and then we'll talk about a few ways to apply it. But just before I start, I just want to get a sense of the size of businesses here. So who's in here with a firm that's 5 or fewer people? Okay, so we've got one there. 6 to 20, a few more, and 21 to 50. Okay, and then say up to 100. Is there anyone over 100? Wow, okay, cool. So we're 20-ish. It's changing quite fast at the moment, so we're about 20. And excuse me. So internal communications, let's talk about what it is. It's sometimes also called employee relations. So I'll use those terms interchangeably. But it's simply the function of communicating with your employees, and your employees are a key stakeholder group. Now, in the sort of line of work I'm in, the word stakeholders is kind of our buzzword for drinks, so I'll have my own little stakeholder drink competition up on stage here. I'll make up for it later. So a couple of the kind of theorists around on these topics, they describe it as things like people are our voice, okay? Or the function is to align hearts, minds, and hands of the employees through dialogue and engagement, or simply managing meaning, okay? All companies communicate with their employees, some do it strategically, but what we're going to show is that it's a contribution to your bottom line. So employees, they're a key audience. Now, they're arguably your most important audience, okay? Any stakeholder map, which is essentially a function of deciding who's important to communicate with in different areas or where you don't need to put as much emphasis. Employees land right at the top every single time. And if you think about, for example, who here thinks it's important to have, was that you?
Sorry, that's when I normally pick up my son from school.
I hope he's being picked up. Okay, good. Okay, so who here thinks it's important to have loyal clients? Who thinks that adds value to your business, right? I think that's a given. Now, that's a huge emphasis for our businesses, is investing in the loyalty of our clients. But if you think about the fact that you couldn't achieve loyal clients without loyal employees, okay, the value of communicating with your employees becomes significant. They're as important, if not more important, than your customers, okay? You've got to nurture them, you've got to respect them, they've got to be well informed. They communicate directly with your customers and your clients and your prospects and other stakeholder groups around your industry and your organization. And they communicate with each other, Let's think of the teams you've been in across your careers, okay? The people who you remember that motivated you, that you thought, this is great, we're achieving great things, and think of that person. And then think of the times where you just thought, I just don't want to be in the same room as this person. They make me miserable. They're just, they just drive me crazy. I can't deal with this. And those are the two types of people. And you want to try and nurture the first type, the inspirational and the leadership kind of thing. It's not about management or seniority. It could be the most junior person in your company can be that leader just by being motivated. And if you can communicate to nurture those things, and generate that respect, then that's a benefit. Your reputation on the back of this makes you look like you need to be, you'll be a company that's viewed as being honorable, that's looking after its employees, okay? You've also got to consider the pace of change in the industry, and Scott talked about this earlier. Things are changing, and if you're not ready to change, then you're essentially, the inertia is going to kill you. There's change all around: technology, competition, automation, offshoring, outsourcing. It's vital to win your employees' commitment, not just for their labor, but for their contribution to your brand and the values of your company. And to illustrate just a very simple way of identifying where your employees sit, I just thought, seeing as I'm banging on a little bit about theory, the simplest way I can illustrate this is a stakeholder map that says, on one axis you've got the power to influence your business, and on the other you've got the interest in influencing your business. Your employees have both. They talk to your customers, they talk to the other stakeholder groups. They want to be in a place that they are employed for the long term, and they get paid and all that kind of stuff. So that puts them right up in the priority corner. And if you think about your best customers, okay, the power to influence your business and the interest in influencing it, it's maybe not even as strong as the employees, which makes them a priority group to communicate with. So the things that you get from this is engagement. So there's a direct link between employee engagement and financial performance, okay? Engagement is again another sort of buzzy word around things like this, but what it really means, and what it's widely agreed as a meaning, is it's a unique thing made up of cognitive, emotional, and behavioral components to do with an individual's role performance, okay? So it's some people think it's a sort of psychological state, some people think it's an attitude state, but it's really a mixture of the whole lot. There's a company called Aon Hewitt, which is, they're a global employee relations advisory firm, very well known, and they got a huge amount of data. And in a report I found in 2015 called The Trends in Global Employment Engagement, it says making engagement happen is not about a development program or tools or technology. It's about highlighting culture and leadership as vital to success, okay, in nurturing your talent. So those two things, culture and leadership, all right, this is what you've got to create to invest in these people. So culture is really about changing and aligning people and programs around the values of your business and a consistent set of beliefs. Leaders are in a unique position to set the tone, and as part of the executive stream, you all play a leadership role in your businesses, and it's about demonstrating the value of your people and linking your people to the mission of your organization, and acting authentically, strategically. If you think about it, right, you've got people in your organization and everyone's very busy, and someone who's maybe a little bit more junior comes up to you and says, really need to talk. Now, how many of you have looked up at that person and just given them that look that says, don't talk to me now, don't bother me, I'm busier than you, right? Have you ever done that? And then afterwards you think, I really should have just spoken to them and helped them. And that person's going to go, okay, sorry, and crept off quietly because they don't want to interrupt you. But to take the moment, and we were talking about this a little bit last night, but to take the moment to just look up and say, we need to discuss that. And if it's even just to acknowledge it and set a time in your calendar that you commit to, making a commitment to that person in your organization, that you're taking them seriously. That's a very simple thing you can do to kind of nurture that sense of talent. Right. Employee relations, internal communications, it directly leads to growth. This is a very well studied and analyzed thing. That's okay, we were just waiting for you. It's a very well studied thing, right? So I fall back on this model quite often, and I talked about this a little bit last year. There's a chap called Fred Reichheld who's done a lot of research in employee relations and in assessing things. So he developed the Net Promoter Score. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a sort of survey system that a lot of companies use. And he said employee retention is key to customer retention. It's with employees that the customer builds a bind of trust. When those people leave, the bond is broken. Okay? Quite often, your customers, your clients, they relate to your employees, not to your brand, and not necessarily to you. So you've got to value and nurture those employees and bring them along so that they keep those customers connected to your business. Because quite often they'll move. And I'm sure people have experienced that, where a client has moved because of the person leaving the company. And just to demonstrate that a little bit, employees are a growth engine, okay? Employee loyalty garners more rewards for the employees, which improves output, which generates loyalty. And you've got this cycle. And so this is an engine in your business. Now, the next bit I'm going to show you, it's a little bit busy, but you'll get a sense of why that engine drives the growth in your business, okay? So you're creating better value for your clients, for your investors, you're creating profit and cost advantages, you're investing more cash as a result, and you're getting more loyal clients as a result. All of this engine here creates growth. And that's an extremely well-studied and reviewed system that just really underpins the necessity for communicating with your team. The other thing is employees are trusted more than you. And there's a report that came out just a couple of weeks back. It's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. Now, Edelman is a huge PR firm in the US, well, globally, but based in the US, and its founder is revered as one of those experts in the sort of field of communications. But the firm's been doing this Trust Barometer report for about 17 years, where they go around the world and they do interviews and research and analysis on what people what they trust, what they consider, a trustworthy thing, and it's huge. So, in the last 4 years, they've been focusing on questions that people, who they would trust to get an answer from. And if you look at this, the sort of questions you're looking at is the pale blue line is the trust in employees. Okay, the senior executives are the dark grey, and the company CEO is a kind of mid blue. So, treatment of employees and customers. No one trusts the CEO or the senior executives about how you treat your customers or your employees, but they trust the employee, and they want to hear that from them, and your team talk to each other about this. Your business practices and crisis handling, financial earnings and operational performance. Everybody trusts the employees about the information for this, but they don't trust the senior leadership. Now, I'm not saying you're all not very trustworthy. They are. But your employees, people trust what they say because they're honest, they're transparent. And if you bring them on a journey to be that with them, you get their voice outside your organization on your behalf. And that's a message that people buy into. It's truth. And that survey is across 28 countries, thousands and thousands of people and businesses. It's a significant bit of research. So it's widely used. So another benefit of employee relations, corporate reputation. Now, again, corporate. These words, that's just the labels they're given in academia, really. It's defined in a number of ways. In principle, everyone agrees that corporate reputation, there's a significant emphasis on how we communicate and the experience of how we behave as a company. Levering a positive reputation is not about parading awards, achievements, and positive testimonials, though that does help. It's about living and demonstrating the reputation in practice on a day-to-day basis over days, weeks, and years, gaining trust and respect in the process. The more esteemed our reputation becomes, the more it behoves us to ensure it's justified. Okay, if you achieve a good reputation, you've got to double down on that and continue to support that and underpin it, because a reputation will disappear in seconds. It'll take years to build up. And there's no doubt action speaks louder than words. What we do is more powerful than what we say, and it's the actions of your employees that is interpreted as a huge chunk of your reputation. So let's just break down how reputation is viewed. Now, there's a variety of methodologies to this. This is the one that I tend to fall back on. There's potentially others that define this. So there's three components: corporate personality, corporate identity, corporate image, and those three combined give you your reputation. So reputation answers, are you good or bad, in essence? Will people trust you? The overall evaluation that you're held in, okay? Image answers what people think of you. That's the outside perception of your business. Now, whether you like it or not, what people think of your business is what your business is. You can't change their perception without changing how the company represents itself out in the marketplace and in various ways. Identity is really the who are you, okay? The attributes, the symbols, the logos, the office, the uniform, all those kind of physical manifestations of your company. And then personality answers the question, what are you like? These are the significant distinctive attributes, all the identifying characteristics of personality, okay? Personality is kind of embodied in the way you do business. And to kind of just give that a bit more focus, personality is the inward looking thing. This is what, it comes from the people inside. Personality isn't defined by what people look at you as or by your logo. It's defined by the people that exist in your company. In the case of a singly owned company, it's defined very much by the personality of the CEO, for example, and how that filters down. It's defined by how you recruit. If you recruit from one bucket of similar type people with no diversity in your company, then your personality is going to be matched by all those people. So those things, investing in your people defines your personality, and that's one of the first steps of your corporate reputation once you add it to those other components. So for example, our company, I'll just use us as an example. So here's a lot of photographs of us. There's quite a lot of beers in that picture, but brush over that. It comes from the organizational culture, right? The core assumptions and values and beliefs shown in the symbols and the rituals and the stories and the activities and all those things that you do. So, when you go out and have lunch together, or you go off on a trip, or you do a team building exercise, these are rituals. These are stories. They build up over time. It's the way we do things around here. That's really how you can define culture in a simple way. The way we do things, okay? It's also a certain amount to do with your strategic purpose and process. It's not what the strategy is, but how it's formed. How an organization goes after its vision and mission, okay? And how the vision flows down through the organization. Now, you might not have planned out a vision, and you hear about it, it's a fairly corporate thing. Let's stick the vision up on the wall, or have our mission statement over here, or paint our cultural values on this wall. That doesn't mean anything if no one's living and breathing that on a day-to-day basis, and you're not acknowledging that, and you're not analyzing it and getting people to draw that through, okay? But a good vision that says, and the vision is where we're going. The mission is how we get there. If you know where you're going, that's part of your identity, and it's part of the personalities. People buy into that. The leadership, the personality, in addition to leadership and CEOs and so on, and their personalities filtering into the company, it also comes from the people that you hire. People who do the work and talk amongst each other, speak to your customers, all right? They live the values. And because of this, they're the most important group of people you have to communicate with. They come before your most important clients. So there's a few trends driving employee relations. So back in 2007, a couple of sort of researchers, John Dorley and Helio Garcia, they identified a series of business trends that helped set the scene for improving employee relations. So I'm just going to talk through those, and I think they're probably quite relatable to most businesses. Okay, first up, growing cynicism. The fat cat, we're in this for, we're not, frankly, a company that's owned by one person has to have values, otherwise we're just working to, fill their pockets. A company that's got a partnership, the wrong type of partnership, again, we're working to fill their pockets. The cynicism is there in the lower levels of a company because what's in it for me? And if that's not communicated, if you're not aligned with values that you can agree with and turn up for and be motivated for, then what are you doing there, and why should you stay? There's also a change in organizational structure. So typically over the last several decades, there's been a very deep hierarchical structure. Senior, CEO, then senior executive management, then the layer of management under that, then the layer of sub-management under that, then maybe some staff, and then maybe some junior staff under that. And you've got this kind of horrible flow of communications. How do you get any message to filter through that many layers of interpretation? Okay, but what's happening is the organizations are flattening out. We're reducing the amount of management and pushing the decision-making further down. And that's actually flattening out the communication as well and speeding up decision-making. Increased rate of change, we've talked about this. We've always done it this way, or by the book. It doesn't work anymore. There's an emphasis on flexibility, on mobility, and being able to just be faster than your competitor at getting to a point. And on that point, speed is a differentiator, okay? Because of technology, largely, it's not really any longer, competing out there. You're not competing on price or quality half the time. It's about speed. Can you deliver this faster? How do you communicate decisions through your business more quickly? If you've got that massive hierarchical structure, decisions aren't going to happen until it's got up the chain to the person who decides they're important enough to make a choice. Lifetime employment is dead. There's not really, people I don't think go out there with a prospect of a job for life. And I suppose in the sense of professional services firms that are built in partnerships, historically they've been about join the company, work your way up. One day I'll be a partner and I will own this company and with my other partners, and then we'll recruit people to come in, and join the company when they're young, and they'll work their way up and then they'll buy me out, so on. It doesn't happen like that anymore. People, someone who's got the talent and experience and the ability to communicate can walk outside your company tomorrow, pick 5 different bits of software, link them all together and have a brand and a company and an accounting system and an invoicing package and design and everything. I mean, they can go online and have a logo developed in less than 24 hours, be a brand and be operating, make all the money for themselves. Why should they stick around and work for your company and share your values and human capital? People are becoming the key differentiator, and it's particularly in professional services firms. We're not defined by the software we use. If a company uses Total Synergy or it uses a BIM package and the other company you're competing with doesn't do that, then sure, it's a differentiator. But they can switch it on tomorrow and learn how it works, and then they're the same as you. So it's the people that use the tools that make the difference. And then desire for purpose. Now this is a significant point with the younger generations coming through. There's so much talk about Gen Y and millennials. They are documented as needing purpose and when they go to work and why they're there. If that's not communicated, they don't feel like they're part of something bigger. I think, there's a fair chance some of them will grow up and realize there's also paying your bills. but for the time being, it's about purpose. So internal communications isn't complicated, all right? So it sounds very corporate, it sounds very big and serious and so on, but it's not complicated, okay? We've established that it's important. Let's figure out how to do this and what would be stopping you. So you want to make people want to stay, okay? If you communicate with them and you're transparent with them and they feel part of these values that I've elaborated on, they ultimately will want to stay. The reason they'll move is because there are components missing, okay, that they can't get. Now, sometimes you cannot offer the career path they want. You can't offer the pay rise they want. That's okay, that happens. But the point is, even if they leave, they take the values with them and they communicate that to the industry and the reputation grows, okay? So even if you have someone change business and it's for good reasons. They communicate that forward, and that's your reputation traveling into your network, and it's a good thing because someone might come back the other way. That company might want to collaborate with you. It's all upside in that regard. It should be, you need to show people what they should be doing. Now, this could be as simple as when you bring someone into your company, how do you onboard them? What systems have you got in place to introduce them to everybody, to introduce them to the systems, to introduce them to the values or the way you do business or your products or your clients? It's a process of bringing people in, connecting them to your other people and the way you do things and your culture. So show them what they should be doing, but equally, this is about doing your work and so on, and having a structure in place that communicates, the excellence or the quality that you want to share. You want to help employees collaborate. It's rare, really, that we achieve anything in silos anymore. It's important that you create an environment that people can collaborate in. Give staff the facts they can use outside and inside the office. So we've seen that your employees are trusted more than you are, okay? They're the voice of your company. They're the things that people value more than what it says on your website or what your CEO says at a conference or something like that. The team is actually the one. So give them the information to use that they can take outside the organization and inside. And motivate employees about organizational change. Now, we've talked about change. We talk about it every year. And I think by being at conferences like this and others, you're aware of change. And it's not something you're necessarily afraid of, but you need to motivate the team that this is going to happen, or it is happening, and get them on board, because you've got people in your companies who don't want to change. And you'll all know who they are. You've got people in your companies who want to change too fast. And you need to align that into a safe way of navigating forwards and making sure that everybody's on board as much as they can be. So the practicalities of this, internal communications is not simply a message that comes from the management and goes down to the staff, okay? It might often seem like that, but it's got to be spread across the organization, okay? So you've got vertical communications, horizontal, diagonal, lateral, parallel. Okay, I'm going to talk about all these things in a second. So you've got to set up 4 types of internal communications activities. Now, again, sorry, the more I say internal communications, the more I realize this sounds just really kind of heavy. These are 4 things that are developed by essentially the leading authorities in this area. A couple of guys, Charles von Brunn and Cees van Riel. So the first element is structure. Okay, so there's the formal and informal channels through which messages are conveyed. Traditionally, structure meant formal communications vertically, top down. Okay, the bigger the company, the more layers, and the more opportunity for that message to become diluted and changed and distorted. All right, by the time it gets down to the bottom, no one really knows what it is, or they don't believe it, or they're just whatever. Right. Internal communications or employee relations, okay, its objective is to create parallel communications, okay? This is every direction in your organization, okay? This is, your team talking to each other. This is the management talking to the team. This is feedback coming back up the chain to make decisions, feedback from clients or from events or things like that actually feeds the purpose of the organization. And there's also a very important element of every business, which is often called the grapevine or the water cooler, okay? This is where your employees talk amongst each other. They have opinions, they have gripes, they have moans, they have weekends, social activities, and this is there. And if you don't allow that to spread across the company as widely as you can, then you've got a segmentation between what the people getting together and talking around the water cooler have to say versus what you think is actually happening in your company. So by having a good structure of communications, you're able to allow that to surface. The flow of communication, so the process through which internal communications move, okay? Most companies, we've talked about vertical flow, comes from top down, okay? Now, top-down communications is typically decisions, it's assignments, it's requests, that kind of thing, okay? And that still happens and it's still got to happen. But upward flows have generally been reports or information but it's not been, anything necessarily positive or beneficial. It's just responses, okay? Research shows that negative information takes longer to flow up than down, and unless the employees have a trusting relationship with the management layer, okay? So the trust in the management layer means negative, positive, or any information is going to surface, and you're going to be able to do something about that. If you're closed off to that, then you're missing a huge chunk of feedback for your company or your marketplace or the business environment you're operating in. When you develop parallel communications, the volume can be substantial, right? We've been learning about that, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later on with an internal social network, but you've got to figure out a way of sort of regulating that. So you create the structure, you allow the flow of content around, but just set some guidelines around it, You've got project-related communications, maybe you want sort of 80% business-related and maybe 20% social and interactive, so you allow the personality of people to come through. Content. So there's other reports and studies that say employees generally don't feel they get enough information. And if you give them more, it's perceived as better and it appears unfiltered and therefore more authentic. So content that's valuable is content that goes to the employees about their position in the company, clarity about their role, and their relative standing in the larger picture. These are things that actually let employees feel more valued because they've got a sense of purpose that relates to your company. And it improves their self-confidence, okay? If they have a better understanding of their own role, their self-confidence comes up, and that's a benefit to you. And when they're conscious of their contribution, it means they're more motivated to come back and do a better job tomorrow. Climate. So this is the emotional environment of the organization, all right? It's kind of related to the broader culture. Do people feel they're allowed to communicate? Is it positive? If it is positive and they do feel they can, then they've certainly got, your team's going to have a much better set of, amount of trust in the leadership of the company and where it's going. You're also going to pick up productivity gains from this kind of thing. When people feel more identified with the organization they're in, their productivity picks up. And that all relates to the engine we were talking about before. Their identity in the company adds to the growth factor. So benefits. Now, we've talked about these along the way. There's essentially a whole bunch of benefits: customer relations, service quality, morale, productivity, profitability, organizational identification, faster recruitment. You're going to hire people faster because the reputation is there. Loyalty, connectedness. And importantly, your absenteeism will go down and your staff churn will go down. And these are, I mean, you guys all know about reporting on systems and staff and timesheets and billing. If your absenteeism is down and your churn is down, then that gets better. Your company's bottom line improves, okay? There's more. I mean, there's a whole list of stuff that goes on there, but it's about loyalty mostly. And the loyalty, as we've seen before, is an engine for growth. So I was going to talk a little bit about the barriers to internal communications, but I've kind of cut that bit out because it was just going to blow things out. So I'm going to just skip forward to the case for an enterprise social network. Now, in your magazine, there's an article about the rise of collaborative communications, and this talks a lot about how communications has been consumerized, okay? In 2004, Facebook arrived. In 2006, Twitter came out. In 2007, the iPhone came out. And then in 2008, one of the early enterprise social networks, Yammer, came out. And there were some other intranets before that, but they were very much document systems, and they were closed networks, and you had to be in the office to access them, and they weren't really communicative. These things didn't really help. So social networking took this consumerized way of communicating and brought it inside the organization to the extent that Facebook even created its own version of a business network communication tool recently, and so on. So we implemented Yammer in our company of 20 people, because again, these are systems that people may think are too big for us. We don't need this. We can just walk across the room and talk to someone. But not everybody likes to talk. But it's amazing how much they'll say on a social network when they feel comfortable with their keyboard and surfacing their personality. I mean, you learn so much about the individuals in your company. But beyond that, it's estimated that 40% of employees are going to work remotely in some way. Well, that's next year. They need to be empowered like a network. They need to be able to communicate like a network. They need to be able to work from home or the cafe downstairs or, you know, wherever they want, and still be able to be part of the communications of your company without actually having to be in the room, okay? The way we've communicated with systems before has been linear, okay? A question on email, and you include 5 people in it, and off you send it, and then someone replies all. So now you've got a response, but then someone else replies all, and now you've got 2 responses that don't relate to each other. And then this horrible thing with this all company email, particularly when they send a really crap joke around and then 50 people reply. An enterprise social network allows you to opt in and out of that kind of stuff, but it lets everybody see what's happening. They can be involved if they want to be, or not involved if they don't want to be. And this is what the essence of collaborative communications is. And that stat there, the 20 to 25% boost in productivity, is conservative. And that's a report from the McKinsey company 2 or 3 years ago. And it's only been growing since then. Who loves email? Andrew loves email, okay. There's always a critic. Email's awful, I hate it, everyone hates it. It's just the most soul-destroying thing, Monday morning clearing your inbox, or any day, or just trying to get something done. And emails keep coming in, it's the worst. Internally, with an internal social network, you should be able to cut your emails significantly by just surfacing transparent communications, monitoring. You just keep an eye on what's going on. You're part of the company, you're part of the pulse. It could be social communications, it could be project communications. In our company, we've got groups for teams. So I know what the development team is up to, what they're talking about. I haven't got a clue what it means half the time, but I do know what they're actually discussing and what's important to them. Everybody gets to see what the marketing team's doing, which is mostly just, you know, colors and fonts. So email's awful. An enterprise social network helps you reduce emails, okay? When we implemented ours, and I wrote an article about this last year, which you can find on the blog on our website. That was one of our only 2 goals: reduce emails internally and reduce meetings. Can we have fewer meetings by surfacing things on a social network, having contributions come in and make a decision or make progress? And it's working. This conference alone, we avoided a lot of meetings by just having discussions in the open that people get to when they can, where ordinarily you'd have to say, right, let's waste an hour of 5 people's time at huge cost to the business by sitting in a room to achieve something that could have been done arguably over 1 or 2 days, but it got done by just surfacing communications in this system. The value is significant, the productivity is significant. So the benefits, significant number of benefits here, okay? Reduce emails, reduce meetings, they're the top 2. Collective intelligence, this is your whole organization understanding your industry, your business, your competitors. You know, we have a whole group dedicated to discussing our competitors, what they're up to, new products, changes, conferences, bits and pieces. It's analysis. It allows us to understand where things are going in the industry and what we have to be wary of and compare. Collaboration projects, you know, across teams, you know, in individual teams, but it allows for people to, you know, you might have someone in a completely different team. You know, I'm not in the development team in our company, but when they discuss something about, you know, the way a screen is set up, excuse me, you can look at it as someone who is maybe not the heaviest system user like you guys would be, and just say, why is that over there? It just doesn't make sense. It's over here, and all of a sudden there's a different way of thinking. And it wasn't necessarily asked for, but it's there, it's surfaced, and you can contribute. Might not make a difference, but social connection. You also get a huge social connection from your colleagues, okay? You don't have to be out every day, but you understand them socially better by their interests surfacing through this. You know, it could be taste in movies, could be a variety of things. So we've ended up, as a result, actually going out to see new movie releases as a team within our company, which just adds to our relationships and our connectedness with each other, simply because something popped up and someone said, oh, it's coming out next week, who wants to see it? And it was really, really good. And without that, you'd have to go and ask someone really awkwardly, do you want to go and see a film with me next week? And then, you know, it's not necessarily a simple thing to do, talking out loud to people about social things. But if it surfaces, it just kind of gains momentum and it adds value. Spread the grapevine, we've talked about. Give your employees a voice. We've talked about the value of your employees representing you out in the world. And measurable value I'll come to in a second. And situation awareness, this is your team understanding where your business is, where your business environment is. And there's more. I mean, I could go on about that a little bit, but I won't. So let's talk about measuring success. There's a few ways to measure success. So we do a Net Promoter Score survey every quarter, and we work with our partner Checkside, who are kindly providing coffee for us at this conference. Now, it's an interesting thing when it's only 20 of you, because when you do an anonymous survey within your teams, you know, there's only 4 of you in your team, and the numbers go down. It's kind of like, who's that? You can get to it pretty quickly. However, the survey allows us to interpret the engagement in the company. Now, this is the way it works is you've got detractors. So anyone who does 0 to 6, they're generally not happy. 7 and 8, they're middle of the road, and 9 and 10, they're promoters. But what you're looking for is a 0 line through the middle. As long as you're not below that, then everything's good. And anything above that is an uptick. There's so much information on this kind of survey online. So Net Promoter Score is what it's called. And we've designed that into our company to assess the team and see what the trends are over time. So we've done, you know, I think a year, maybe 5, 6 quarters now. And it changes. It's quite remarkable. But it's a good insight. The speed of recruitment's another one, okay? If you've got a great reputation in the industry, in the marketplace, because your employees are out there essentially sharing that culture, then you will recruit people faster. And that is a cost saving, a significant cost saving. The longer it takes to recruit someone, particularly if you lose some expertise or some talent, the longer it takes to replace that, the more costly that is in your business. Better yet, don't lose people. People stay around because you're communicating with them and they feel part of this. You don't get that churn. And the cost, again, in that article, I think that Checkside wrote for the magazine, they talk a little bit about the cost of churn and replacing people, and it's significant. So look after them and they might stick around. And we also measure from our Yammer activity, the statistics. So this is a view of 28 days, the last 28 days. 400, and bearing in mind there's 20 of us in the company, 455 messages were posted. 454 new messages in groups, and over all time, which is about 18 months, I think, since we've been using this, 8,000 messages. And that's just a few of us. But what we know because of that, and what we know about each other, and what everybody knows about the business and the industry is significant because of that. And our social activities come up a bit, okay? This is from last year at the conference. This is some of our team, some of our clients, some of you are in the room. This is the after party, by the way. You'll get flyers for that this afternoon. So come on down. It's a good load of fun. And it's a load of fun because our team talk to each other. And they engage with each other and they know each other. And they know what they're doing in the company, why they're in the company. And it comes out in the personality of the people, which becomes the personality of the company. I think hopefully it's one of the things you take away from this conference is the personality of our company reflected by the people that you meet in the team. So that's it. Close on a really cheesy photograph again. You can't beat a bit of cheesy stock imagery. Thanks very much.